Hi, I'm Mike Sullivan, editor of Business Acumen magazine. Today I'm chatting with Paul Newman, who's the manager of Dial Before You Dig, which sounds like a pretty essential service for anyone in excavation. Can you tell us a bit about Dial Before You Dig and how it was founded?
Yeah, sure, Mike. I guess Dial Before You Dig basically started as a result of an incident, unfortunately, which occurred back in 1985 in Western Australia. And basically that incident was associated with a guy on a dozer. He was ripping some ground, and unfortunately the ripper on the machine struck a 200mm gas main. Now, I guess the beauty of the whole thing was that nobody was hurt as a result of the incident. Basically, he hit this gas main, sticks and dust started to throw up out of the ground. He didn't know what was going on. He jumped off of the machine and started to run up the hill. Ran about a couple of minutes later, the whole thing exploded in a ball of flames, and that was obviously the heat of the machine, the gas being released out of the pipe, and consequently, as I say, it exploded. And out of that incident, they had a judicial inquiry, and the main concern was, why would someone put a great D7 dozer in the area where there was a 200mm gas main? The simple answer to that was, they didn't know it was there. As we all know, when an asset gets first installed, the area gets cleared, marker posts are installed. So anyone coming onto a site, there's visualisation to say something's installed there, but that gas main had been there for 20, 30 years. So over time, trees had grown, the grass was now this high, marker posts had either fallen over or someone had thought this would be a good fence post, I'll take that. So unfortunately for the person on the machine, there was nothing there to tell him that that gas main existed. And hence that's what then got people starting to think, and they put a commission together to determine, well, how are we going to get around this? And that was how basically Dial Before You Dig got started, and it kicked off in WA in 1987.
Members of the general public like myself assume that all these services are mapped and somebody knows about them. Is that not the case?
Look, yes, somebody does know about them, but it's all about sharing information. And the beauty of Dial Before You Dig is, and I say to people, when Dial Before You Dig wasn't there, you'd arrive on a site and you'd stand out on that street, if it was there, that's where you're working, and you'd probably start scratching your head thinking, all right, who do I need to contact to find out what's under the ground here? And then, let's say there's 5 assets that are in that area, you might have come up with 4, just off your own, from what you can see around or what you've thought would be there, but the chances are you're going to miss someone, and obviously then who's at fault and what are the implications if you hit one of those assets.
So the dangers of, apart from obviously the gases, would be one of the worst things you could hit, but there must be also potentially underground power, underground fibre optics, those sorts of things.
Yep, you're completely correct, and more and more utilities now choose to put assets under the ground. No one likes to see cables and whatnot strung above the ground. The beauty of a service being underground, it's out of mind, it's out of sight, so that's great, but at the same time then, where is it underground? So we encourage more and more utilities to come to us and register those assets, and primarily we find that is the case. If we wind the clock back into the 70s, and I'm using telecommunications as an example, we all knew there was one carrier, PMG or Telecom. Here we are now in 2015, and look, the last time I looked, and that was a couple of years ago, there was over 360 licensed telecommunication providers in Australia. So it's just, that's not to say in any particular street there's going to be 200 or 300 teleco providers, but the likelihood is there's more than one.
There's also some that have disappeared, that maybe have assets underground and have disappeared. So.
Yeah, that doesn't happen too often nowadays. Generally, there's certainly some utilities that have what we might call redundant cables in the ground, and ideally, someone still owns that asset, ideally they still retain that information on plan, so at least if someone finds something underground, it's much more beneficial if they can find out that it's a dead cable or it's a dead pipe or a disused pipe. But unfortunately, it's not always the case. So, there is assets under there that nobody knows about.
So Dial Before You Dig is fundamentally a massive database of information on what is underground. How do you go about getting that information? That must be a tremendous job.
Yeah, and I guess one of the biggest misperceptions about Dial Before You Dig is people think that we hold every plan of every utility's assets. Well, in actual fact, we don't. So if I can give you an example of how we capture information when we bring members on board, basically we're looking at areas of interest. So in other words, if you imagine our system is built on layers, and I'll start with someone like Telstra. They've got blanket coverage over all of Australia. So what I'm saying there is you put an inquiry into Dial Before You Dig, whether it be here where we're sitting now or whether you're at the back of Ayers Rock, and you put that inquiry in, you're always going to get a response from Telstra because they've got that blanket coverage. If then we use some of the others, like a council, we don't register whether they've got a water pipe or whether they've got a sewer pipe or storm water, but what we do register is the area that council covers. Okay, so it's just regions of coverage.
So you know something's there.
Something's
not
there. We
necessarily
don't know
what.
what it is. Like gas companies, they primarily would register corridors with us. So once again, we're looking at those layers built in our system. A corridor would be buffered out. So let's say the gas main is in a 3 metre easement. We'd probably buffer that out to something like 15 metres. In other words, someone puts an inquiry in, we identify that that gas main is potentially going to be impacted by their inquiry. We notify each of the utilities. So we don't provide any plans. We provide a response to a customer which would say, we've received your application for information. We've identified utilities A, B, C and D, potentially have an asset in that area. Those utilities will respond back to you with plan information.
So apart from diggers going into that area, you might also supply information to one of those utilities that's going to upgrade an asset or whatever, and they wouldn't know what's there either.
That's exactly right. So it's not just for Fred Smith excavations, like you're saying. If our members are doing work, they would use the service. So we certainly promote our service to a broad market. It's not just targeted at excavators. Mums and dads working in their backyards. Like people would say, well, why do I need to do a Dial Before You Dig in my own backyard? 9 times out of 10, the information you're going to get back in terms of working in your own property is probably not going to tell you a whole lot. But the more important thing is there are many of our utility members that have major infrastructure passing through people's properties.
Right.
So if you don't ask the question and then you go and hit that particular asset, one, you're putting yourself at risk, and also whatever the damage you've done is, the likelihood is you're going to have to pay for the restoration of that service.
So at a fundamental level, the service saves lives, saves money from damage.
Yep.
Is it also now part of planning for certain organisations and councils?
Very much so, Mike. We find now, when we break down all the users of our service each month, especially in Queensland, we see a very large growing area in terms of design work, planning works. So people see our service as essential when they're planning to build, it might be a new road or, there's a commercial building going to go in. They want to know up front that what's on that site. They don't want to get excavators out on site, putting inquiry then and find they've got a conflict. They need to resolve those conflicts before they come to do the site works.
So how has the digital revolution changed or enabled what Dial Before You Dig does?
Yeah, hugely. I came into this role in 2007, and to give you an understanding, back then in 2007, we were receiving around about probably 45% of our inquiries via web.
Right.
So people that use our service basically have a choice of doing it online, or they can phone us.
So do they type in map coordinates or something? Is that how it's done?
Yeah, well, if you go online, there's a variety of methods in which you can get the information. You might have XY coordinates that you want to load into the system. You can do it by that. You can put in street addresses. So there's a multitude of ways you can put the information in, and generally over quite a large area too, if that is what is required. And as I say, back in the 2007, around about 40% of our inquiries were done online, and the other 40 was the other 60% was made up of fax and phone.
Right.
Now here we are in 2015, we've got around about 93% of people go online. We've got around about 7% that are made up of phone, and the fax was killed off probably 2 or 3 years ago.
So is the shift to online, obviously there's a natural shift that way, but is it also because your service delivers better online now anyway?
Certainly does. I guess the proof is in the pudding in terms of if the web wasn't a good means for people to lodge inquiries, we wouldn't see such huge growth as what we've seen on the web. I guess I can say I've been to the US for the last 5 years, and over there, the best performing states in terms of people lodging inquiries online is around 50 to 60%. They're quite
Is that right?
set back to see that we're up in the 90%, so they can't imagine themselves getting there. And obviously they will over time, but we certainly emphasise all our marketing on pushing the web as the preferred medium. And obviously, given that it works, people will go back to that. We're certainly mindful that there will always be a need for phone, because there are some people that a requirement that they would want a phone in.
Yeah. What's your challenge at the moment? Is it getting those plans made available to you? Is that part of your challenge?
Our challenge is getting more utilities to register with us. So as it currently stands, generally, dial before you dig, there is no legislation behind us. So in other words, if you're a utility, you're not required to register your assets with us. Now, in saying that, the only area we really struggle for full participation in general is with local/state governments. Right. So what I find generally is that a new utility has an asset, they come to me wanting to register that asset into Dial Before You Dig. Whereas with council, unfortunately, and we've got a lot of great councils of members of Dial Before You Dig, and that's growing all the time. However, it's hard work, and it takes a lot of time to get a council to come on board with us. So, and that's I guess there's some worries behind that for a contractor that today is working in a particular council area where they are part of Dial Before You Dig, but tomorrow his work is in a council area and that council isn't a part of Dial Before You Dig. Well, from a Dial Before You Dig perspective, we certainly can tell someone who does register assets with us, but we can't tell someone who doesn't register assets with us. And the simple answer behind that is that if we said that so-and-so wasn't a member of Dial Before You Dig, but we failed to mention nor was this other company, we're putting ourselves in a position where we could be found liable because we didn't tell that excavator that this particular company isn't a part of Dial Before You Dig. So, as I say, we really want to get every utility registered with us. It takes time, and that is one of the key objectives around my board's strategic thinking is getting more utilities on board.
At the end of the day, if someone digs up a sewer main, it's the local authority that's got to come and fix it as well. So, from an economic point of view, it doesn't make sense not to give you the information.
Not at all. And if I talk back to my time when I was in Telstra prior to coming into this role, I was responsible for reporting on all optic fibre cable damages in Queensland. And the first question I used to put to someone when one of our cables had been cut is, have you done a Dial Before You Dig? And if the response came back to us to say, well, no, I haven't, as far as Telstra was concerned, you're fully liable for that damage because you haven't met your first point of your duty of care. And more of our members, we say to them, that should be the first question you ask someone when they've hit your asset. Why does a utility register their assets with Dial Before You Dig? One, they don't want the asset damaged. They understand that people's lives are at risk, as you said, be it gas, be it electricity. Okay, you hit a telco cable, it's not life-threatening. The bill that comes back to you might be life-threatening, but certainly not the incident. So, we certainly encourage utilities to be a part of what we're about.
What sort of cost is involved for, say, a local authority to register with you?
Well, look,
there's an upload fee, I gather.
No. We're a not-for-profit, so our business is all about working for our members.
Right.
So how we structure our fees, and this is every state runs its own business. So Dial Before You Dig is a national association. However, each state runs its own business. And in general, in terms of fees, the only fee a utility will pay to be a member is for the number of referrals or notifications we will send to them about groundbreaking activities. So there's no joining fee, there's no annual fee that you have to pay. It's just we'll bill you, be it quarterly or monthly, for those volumes of referrals that we've sent to you.
Right, which is saving them money anyway, isn't it?
That's right. It's good corporate governance for a utility to be a part of a nationally recognised system. We promote our service as the essential first step. So it's certainly not a case of, I do a Dial Before You Dig and then I get a warm fuzzy feeling thinking, well, if something goes wrong now, hey, I'm covered, I've done Dial Before You Dig. No, you've got the first tick in the box. There's other steps that flow on from Dial Before You Dig.
So is part of your challenge also just getting business in general to understand that you should be the first port of call if they're doing any sort of groundwork.
Yeah, and look, I think in a lot of ways we've certainly captured that market in terms
It's a
of
good name, that works.
It certainly is. You know, if I go back to, as I say, when I first started, I'd be working on a trade stand and I'd see people come through, and you'd find a lot of people would stand there for a couple of seconds and they look at the brand, and then they'd eventually come up to you and say, "Oh, what do you do?" You know, they might have had some. They might have seen the brand, but they didn't understand what it's about. Now what I find is, you know, people walk past the trade stand and they go, "Oh, there's the dials." You know, our brand is well recognised. Obviously, you know, the benefit is we don't have competition in the marketplace, and that's not to say we need to rest on our laurels and think, well, that'll never happen. Certainly it could, but being a not-for-profit, we work on behalf of our members. There may not be a real desire for someone else to step into this marketplace.
It's a very enlightened business in that regard, isn't it? It's general public probably thinks government does this sort of thing, but of course it doesn't. You're in fact coordinating government.
That's right, and so many people actually think we're either, oh, you're Telstra or you're a part of government. Well, no, we're not. We've certainly got support of all our members, and the government in a lot of ways supports what we're about. Certainly Work Health Place and safety is very supportive of what we're about. Many events we go to, we have the electrical safety people on our stand with us promoting, and we get a lot of value out of our members because more and more of our members are pushing that safe digging message that we promote.
Are you finding an uptick in use because of mobile technologies? A lot of tradies now have got access to the web on site.
Exactly.
Are you finding it's being used that way?
For sure, yeah. What we see now, Mike, is we've developed an app for the iPhone, and we've also got a mobile web-enabled service. So the app's been around a little bit longer than the mobile web, but what this allows people to do is lodge inquiries straight off their smartphones, and what we're finding, more and more of our members are fully automated. So what I'm saying there is they go online, or they pick up their smartphone, lodge the inquiry, it goes straight through our system. We then funnel it straight out to our members. If they've got an automated response, it just picks up what we've sent through, and plans are being sent back to the customer sometime within minutes. Okay, so when we have a member join, the understanding is that they need to respond to inquiries within 2 working days or 48 hours. Nowadays, it's very unusual that time frame isn't met. So I hear all the time from people, the service is a great turnaround. You know, as I say, we promote planning. We don't think that people should just arrive on a site and say, righto, now I need the information, I want it now. No, that's not what the service is about. But as I say, being that more and more of our members are automated, people are finding that those responses are coming through in a very timely manner.
Are you finding that you're having to upgrade your system to improve those response times?
Look, we're always, our DigSafe system, we've got one call centre based in Melbourne that covers all of Australia. So once again, when we wind the clock back, we found that every state used to have a call centre of their own, and you'd all run your own sort of business through the call centre. It's all centralised now. The DigSafe program that is hosted by our provider, Pelican Corp, is continually being upgraded to meet the demands of people, lodging inquiries. Because to give you an understanding, this last financial year we had 1.3 million inquiries nationally over the year. That's generated around just over 6 million referrals out to our members. So on average, every working day around the country, there's around about 5,000 inquiries being lodged every day, which generates around about 24,000 referrals out to members. So, and on average, over the last 15 years, our service grows year on year around about 13% every year.
So that's a big economic advantage you're delivering, isn't it? I mean, being able to speed up projects in a safe way, saving a lot of money.
It is. It's saving money, and as I say, if you're not using the service and your business is excavation, you're really a fool to yourself. No member has got any sympathy for somebody that's tried to take shortcuts. At the end of the day, we want to promote safe excavation. As we've said, it saves people's lives. The impacts of hitting a power or a gas main can be horrific, and if we can, basically our vision is to have every member register our assets with us, and our mission is for utilities and members to get behind and support the service we provide.
Mhm. Just one more question, Paul. With the rollout of the NBN, has that automatically become part of your data?
Look, with the NBN, as we all know, it was going to come off in a big bang and take off, and look, it got off to a slow start, to be honest with you, but in saying that, NBN is one of our members. We see that NBN in time will be our second largest member behind Telstra in terms of the coverage. We're really seeing them now growing their areas as they're putting more and more infrastructure in the ground. So NBN is a strong supporter of Dial Before You Dig, and as I say, they will be one of our major players as time goes on.
Because that would be a very expensive cable to cut, wouldn't it, that fibre optic?
That's exactly right. And look, all our telco providers nowadays, apart from Telstra that still have a copper network, which is out there, and the understanding is at some stage that is more than likely going to be handed over to NBN, the copper as well.
Yeah.
So not just NBN, as I say, any telco now primarily has optic fibre in the ground, and I guess the scary part of that is it's not something that's easily located. In other words, it's not metallic. So, as I said, the essential first step at Dial Before You Dig is putting the inquiry in. We now promote the second essential step is getting the asset located. And when I say located, that's engaging with someone that's got the ability to electronically locate where those cables or pipes run.
So that's more difficult with fibre?
Certainly more difficult with fibre. As I say, no metallic object with it, so you can't hook onto it and locate it. So generally it means you've got to find other means of locating that asset.
Do you think over time the effect of your service is that it actually becomes more economical to put particularly electrical cabling underground? Is that one of the side effects of what you're offering?
It certainly is. I guess when we talk like Energex in southeast Queensland, they've got a lot of infrastructure that's underground because we're in a very
storm-ridden area.
Exactly, and there's a lot of congestion in a capital city. If we talk, on the other hand, with Ergon Energy that cover 97% of Queensland in terms of what they provide a service for, obviously primarily their infrastructure is wires and poles. In saying that, they've still got buried assets, and we're certainly open-minded to our service potentially being expanded to capture overhead assets as well.
Okay.
And people would say, well, hang on, people can see overhead wires and cables, why would we need to have information about it? Well, when we start looking at the statistics associated with contacts with Ergon's assets, primarily they're with overhead assets. So people can see them, however, they're seeing an increase in incidents associated with people hitting overhead power lines. So it's something that we're looking at as an organisation, and it may be something where we'll start providing responses to people, whether it be working above or underground.
So pretty much any asset, above or below ground, you want a map?
That's right, yeah. So as I say, we're not there yet with overhead in terms of providing plan information, but it is something that we're certainly having a serious look at.
All right. Thanks for your time today, Paul.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks very
it.
much, Mike.
Very enlightening.
Thank you.